أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I make dua that you're well and welcome to our second lesson in our series of lectures or lessons on the Umrah. In our last lesson, we looked at the ruling pertaining to the Umrah, who it's necessary for, who it's wajib for, and who it is valid from. Today, we will look at the beginning of the journey from our homes and entering into Mecca and some of the matters pertaining to that and the fiqh pertaining to it. Once we have intended to undertake the journey, that's not yet our actual intention of Umrah, but it is the beginning of getting the ball rolling to embark on this very important act of ibadah. Some scholars consider it the most virtuous act of worship. However, the main view in the Shafi'i madhab is that salah is the most virtuous act of worship. However, because of the coming together of a variety of sacrifices in the Umrah, some scholars consider it as the most virtuous act. It requires physical preparation, it requires financial preparation, it requires physical preparation and undertaking, which is probably the most important. It requires one readying one's family for the journey and putting things into place for all of that. So all of these sacrifices are certainly seen by Allah and rewarded by Him. From the preparations for Hajj, or from what we do when setting out on the journey, as is customary in our localities and in our society, is that we usually have a little bit of a gathering when setting off for the journey. And that's where the journey becomes real for many people. However, there are certain things that one should take care of before embarking on the journey. As mu'tamirin, readying ourselves to embark on this auspicious journey, many a preparation would have been put into place before leaving our localities. We should never forget that amongst these preparations, it is important to consider ourselves as people who are journeying and may never come back. Not in a dreary way, but simply because as Muslims, we are always conscious of our mortality and the fact that we may never see the next moment, even for that matter. So it is important to put into place things like a will, means and preparations for one's family, as well as seeking forgiveness from those that one might have wronged. Customarily, we may have little gatherings at our homes when embarking on the journey, but we should also never forget that there are sunan, practices of the Prophet ﷺ that are recommended to do when embarking on a journey. Amongst these recommended practices of Rasulullah ﷺ is that one perform 2 raka'at of prayer before embarking on the journey. It is also recommended to leave the house with the left foot and to make a dua. That dua is Bismillahi tawakkaltu ala Allah la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. In the name of Allah, meaning I begin this journey of mine, or I leave my home with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have placed my trust in Allah. There is no power and no might except with Allah. When a person makes this dua, angels respond to him by saying, Hudita wa kufita wa wuqita. You have been guided, you have been sufficed, meaning all of your needs have been seen to, and you have been protected. This is an indication that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fulfill all of what the angels have said. Also, the shaitan withdraws from such a person that makes this dua. There are a number of other du'as that a person can make when leaving the home as well, that are also from the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But this brief class does not have the time and leisure of expounding on all of them. It's good and important to remember that on your journey, most of the time you are journeying with other people, to remain relaxed. Place your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the dua that we just mentioned encourages us to do. And when we have that reassurance, we know that everything is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout our journey. We are to maintain good conduct with everybody that we are journeying with. And that is one of the places in which a person's real character shows, as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us. Or when he said that a person truly knows somebody when they travel with him. أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. We then embark on our journey, heading off to the airport or whichever means of conveyance we are using. And we should remember to maintain good adab throughout our travel, because we are ambassadors of Al-Islam. We are also to remember at all times, as the dua that we made reminds us, that everything is in the hands of Allah. So there's no need to be flustered or become anxious or to fret about every small detail. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of everything. On our journey, we should remind ourselves, despite it not being the place of our niyyah for Umrah, we should remind ourselves of the gravity of the ibadah that we are undertaking. Some scholars consider it to be the most virtuous act of worship on account of the various sacrifices that go into it. The spiritual sacrifice or preparation that goes into it, the financial preparation, the material preparation for one's family, the logistical preparation, all of those things, and the physical preparation that one needs to do, all of those things come together to add to the virtue of the Umrah that we are undertaking. Whilst we are traveling, we should remember that it is a time in which our du'as are mustajab. So make abundant dua for yourself, for your family, for those beloved to you, for the ummah at large. Let it not be that we travel heedlessly, just watching movies all the time on the plane, to this blessed journey. No, all of this forms part of our preparation. Before, people took long journeys by boat or by foot to get to the harams of Mecca and Medina. Also, all of the rulings of a traveler apply to us once our journey has begun. It is permissible to combine between the salahs of Dhuhr and Asr in either the waqt of Dhuhr or Asr, and the salahs of Maghrib and Isha in either the awqat of Maghrib or Isha. And it is also permissible to shorten the prayers of Dhuhr and Asr to 2 rak'at each, as well as Isha to 2 rak'at. In fact, it is recommended to shorten the prayers in the Shafi'i madhab and wajib in the Hanafi madhab. This can be done on the plane as well. However, for the Shafi'i travelers, it is important to remember that if you perform your salah whilst sitting, then that salah must be repeated afterwards. You're not sinful for having to repeat your salah, but it must be repeated afterwards. We then embark on our journey. And depending on where the first destination is, matters will differ. If the first destination is to Mecca, that would mean that a person would have to embark on the rites of the Umrah from the time that they are on the plane already. But we will get into that in a moment, inshallah. If it is that you are heading to Medina first, which has become fairly common practice, then one shouldn't think that they are heading to a lesser destination. The meeting with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is an immense spiritual undertaking. In fact, the scholars agree that on this journey it is recommended to visit Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if for one moment you thought that it is a lesser place, then know that despite the fact that Mecca as a whole is the holiest and most virtuous lands on earth, some scholars hold that the land or the earth that enshrouds Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is more virtuous even than that. But leave alone the sand or the soil which surrounds him. We are going to visit Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is great virtue to praying in his mosque, and there is certainly great virtue and spiritual benefit to standing before him sallallahu alaihi wasallam and greeting him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make all of our wishes and ad'iyah that we make in that vicinity accepted. But we will speak of its virtues and the spiritual benefits and undertakings in Medina in the next lesson, inshaAllah. Let us now get into the actual fiqh of the Umrah. Don't worry, it's not daunting. In fact, What makes the Umrah are 4 pillars or arkan. Those are the Ihram, performing the Tawaf around the Kaaba, performing the Sa'i between Safa and Marwa, and then shaving or cutting one's hair. That's it. If those 4 things are intact, then one's Umrah is sound and complete. Yes, there are details to each of those things, but nothing to be frightened of. And in addition to that, there are some sunnah for each of them and etiquettes in relation to them, which we will speak about in due course. I'll try to be brief with the fiqh so as not to overburden you. As for the Ihram, when we speak about the Ihram, what comes to mind is a set of clothing. But in reality, the Ihram is a state or a spiritual state that one enters into by making a niyyah to perform the Umrah. That niyyah is made at a specific place, which we call a miqat. The miqat at which one makes the niyyah depends on where you are entering Makkah from. If you are entering Makkah from outside of Makkah, then there are 5 mawaqit. If one approaches Makkah from the side of Yemen, the miqat will be Yalamlam. If one approaches from the western side, it will be either Juhfa or Bi'ru Ali or Dhul Hulayfa. That's the one that one would cross when passing from Medina. Most people who perform Umrah with a group will be entering Mecca via Medina, and thus they will don the Ihram and enter the state of Ihram, rather I should say, at Dhul Hulayfa or Bi'ru Ali. Some of the other miqats are Qarnul Manazil for those entering from Najd, as well as Dhatu Irq for those entering from the Iraqi side. Once a person has crossed those miqats or mawaqit and finds themselves closer to Mecca than that, but is not yet in the Haram region or in the precincts of the Haram, they will don, if they are a resident there, they will don the Ihram from their homes and then approach the Haram. For those that are already in the Haram, they will cross the boundary of the Haram. What is referred to as Adna al-Hil, the most common one, is Tan'im that people go to, or Masjid Aisha, which is in Tan'im, that people will go to don the Ihram if they are already in the precincts of the Haram. Some other places which people can don the Ihram for are Hudaybiyah or Ju'rana, amongst others. This applies to those people who would want to perform a second or third Umrah whilst already finding themselves in the Haram region in Mecca. Before entering the spiritual state of Ihram or making that niyyah at the specific places that we mentioned, there are a number of things that are to be done. It is sunnah to perform a ghusl, which is a washing of the entire body with the intention of performing that ghusl as a sunnah before entering the Ihram. In addition to that, it is recommended to trim one's moustache, to remove all the pubic hairs from under the arms and the private parts, to clip one's nails, and also to perfume one's body, right? Not to perfume the clothing of the Ihram, rather to perfume one's body before donning the Ihram. Those sunan will likely be performed either before entering the plane if you are going to enter Mecca via plane, or it will be done in your hotel in Medina. Thereafter, you will don your clothing of Ihram. The clothing of Ihram for a male is that he should not wear any sewn garments or any garments that fully encompass his body or an entire limb. An example of such an article of clothing would be a pants that fully encompasses each of his legs. Rather, he will wear 2 pieces of clothing, an izar and a rida, a lower garment, something like a lungi, but not a sewn garment. It's something that will be open. He will then take it on either side and tie it around himself like a lungi. Then he will have an upper garment, which is also an open sheet that he will use to shroud his upper part of his body. It is recommended that these two articles of clothing be white. For a female, she is not restricted to wearing unsewn garments. She can wear sewn clothing that encompass her body. It is also compulsory for her to cover her entire awrah. However, she must not cover her face while she's in a state of ihram, nor must she cover her hands. It is, however, recommended for her to put henna on her palms during that period because her hands will be uncovered. After having donned the clothing of ihram, you will then proceed to the miqat, which will be Bi'r Ali or Dhul Hulayfa if traveling from Medina. Once you have arrived at that miqat, the bus will stop. You will get off your bus, enter the masjid over there, perform 2 raka'at, which are sunan, before entering the state of ihram. You will then make some dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accept your ibadah, etc., and for whatever good you desire. Thereafter, you will actually make your niyyah for ihram. Now, it's important to note that the niyyah is something that resides in your heart, that you make your mind conscious of, and that you enter into that state with your heart, right? And so you would simply tell yourself, or say to yourself, and make istihdar, or present to your mind, that I am intending to perform an umrah for the sake of Allah, and I have entered the state of ihram for that purpose. نويت العمرة لله وأحرمت بها. I intend to perform the umrah for Allah, and I've entered the ihram for that purpose. Now you are actually in a state of ihram. However, it would be wise to add to your intention that if anything bars you from performing your umrah, like a sickness, or for a female, if she falls out, that she will be released from her state of ihram. That would allow her to enter Mecca despite being out of the state of ihram, or if she falls out once having entered the haram but not having performed her umrah yet, then she can simply don her, or she can remove her ihram clothing, etc. And at a time that it is convenient for her, she can then put on her ihram clothes again, do all of the sunan before that, and then simply go to Tan'im or Masjid Aisha or anywhere just beyond the boundaries of the haram and perform her umrah from there at a time that is convenient for her. The same can apply to a male if he falls sick or something bars him from performing his umrah. Right? That's something important not to forget. It will facilitate a lot of convenience if anything unplanned were to come about. So just a reminder, you would say to yourself then that I intend to perform umrah for the sake of Allah, and I'm entering the state of ihram for that purpose. However, if anything bars me from performing that umrah, like hayd for a female, then I am released from the state of ihram. It doesn't mean you're going to have to leave Makkah without performing your umrah. Don't worry about that. Your mutawif or the alim that is with you will guide you along the process of what you need to do, but it will just facilitate a lot of ease for yourself and for everybody else on the journey. And it will save you from potentially having to pay a dam or remain in a state of ihram for a long period of time. After having made that intention, you are now officially in a state of ihram. This is where we begin to say the talbiyah. Those heart-rendering words that show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala our desire to be present as His guests. Where we say, لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك. O Allah, here I am. I am at your service, O Allah, here I am. إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك. Indeed, O Allah, all praise belongs to you, and all bounty belongs to you, and all dominion belongs to you, O Allah. Surely you have no partners. These immortal words we will say throughout our journey from the miqat until we enter Mecca. When we go over any high place, when we begin moving, when we stop, when we first enter Mecca, when we see the Kaaba for the first time, we will continue saying these words, and I guarantee you, throughout that journey, thinking about these words, "Oh Allah, here I am, oh Allah. I've presented myself before you, oh Allah." It has a special spiritual effect on a person. SubhanAllah, just thinking about it now makes my heart yearn to leave this place that I'm in and just present myself there, SubhanAllah. You know, there are few pleasures in life that can rival, in fact, there are no pleasures in life that can rival a true moment of sincerity in the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah take us there many times. So then we will enter the bus or whichever conveyance we are using. If it is the train that you're going via, you will probably enter your state of ihram whilst on the train. Or if you are going via aeroplane and you're entering Makkah via aeroplane, you will have to enter your state of ihram on the aeroplane. But we continue to make the talbiyah, and then we enter Makkah. Before getting to the next part of our journey, there are a few things to know about the state of ihram. We mentioned that for a male, he must not wear any sewn garments that encompass his body. Rather, he should have 2 shrouds with which he covers himself, and it's recommended to be white. For a female, she may wear sewn garments. However, there are some additional things to know. In terms of the footwear, right? A male should not wear shoes that cover his entire foot as well. Rather, the heels of his feet as well as his toes should be open. So something like an old school sandal or a flip-flop or a slipper would be perfect. If it is a slipper that has a strap at the back, that would also be fine, like some of those, I don't want to mention brand names, but some of those hiking sandals, those would work, but the toes and the heels should be open. For a female, she should not cover her face and her hands, as I mentioned before. Some females may be wondering, what if I wear a niqab? Well, in the Shafi'i madhab, in the state of ihram, the female should not cover her face. However, if she wears a visor and then hangs something over that, that's not directly covering her face, that will not be problematic. However, for her to not wear her veil during that period of time is perfectly fine for her. There are other things that are impermissible during the state of ihram as well. Firstly, for a male, he should not cover his head. In addition to not wearing sewn garments, he should not cover his head. So once he has made his niyyah for ihram, he shouldn't put a fez on, he should not put a turban on. That will not violate or take him out of a state of ihram, but would necessitate a fidya of sorts or a penalty of sorts, right? Which we will speak about at a later time. So he should not cover his head, nor even a part of his head. So he should not take his ihram or the upper shroud and cover his head with it, right? Unless, of course, there is a need for it. Like if somebody has some ailment in their head that requires them to cover their head, then they can cover their heads. So the not wearing sewn garments and the not covering the head, those apply to males. In addition to that, one should not comb the hair. It's not haram to comb the hair. It's makruh to comb the hair. That is if one does not fear that it will remove hairs. However, if one fears or expects that in combing your hair, perhaps the roots of your hair are weak, and you expect that it will remove hair, then it is haram to comb the hair. It is haram to remove hairs from one's body, to clip one's nail, or to remove skin from the body. It is also haram during the state of ihram to perfume oneself, and that includes using scented or fragrant soaps to wash oneself. It's also haram in the state of ihram to hunt land animals. However, if it's animals from the sea or sea animals, it is permissible. But I doubt anybody's going to go fishing whilst in the state of ihram, especially not for umrah. Also, it is impermissible to get married or have a nikah whilst one is in a state of ihram, and it is haram to engage in sexual intercourse as well as foreplay whilst in a state of ihram. In light of all of these things that are impermissible to do whilst in a state of ihram, it's important to call to mind the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, wherein he says, Al-Hajju ash'ath aghbar, the person performing the Hajj. And the same applies to a mu'tamir, for the person in the state of ihram. He is one who is dust laden and disheveled. Right? This is not meaning that we are people who love to be untidy. Rather, we are presenting ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a plain, simple, broken fashion. And this is a presentation or symbolic of our humility before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not any good objective to look for the fanciest material for your ihram or anything like that. We are trying to present ourselves before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a simple fashion, expressing via our words and via our appearance our great need for His forgiveness, His acceptance, and His bounty and mercy. This is what we have to share about the ihram and the beginning of the journey of Umrah in this brief lesson. Insha'Allah, in our next lesson, we will speak about the rest of the journey of Umrah and its rites, and we will get into the actions and places to visit in Madinatul Munawwarah, the blessed city of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ila al-liqa, till we meet next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.